It's 1 a.m., and you said one slightly awkward thing in a meeting 11 hours ago. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. And you're lying in the dark replaying it on a loop, adding new humiliating details each time, like your brain is editing a highlight reel of your worst moment and refuses to stop. That's not a willpower problem. It happens in other shapes too. A dark, unwanted thought that shows up while you're driving and makes you panic about what it says about you. A text left on read. Three dots appearing and disappearing while your mind fills the silence with a whole story about being left. An old failure resurfacing mid-meeting, fully formed, and suddenly you're not in the room anymore. Different situations, same mechanic. Your mind isn't malfunctioning. It's generating thoughts fast, without permission, and then treating some of them as reports from reality instead of noise it happened to produce. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, built an entire practice around one claim that still holds up. It is not the event itself that disturbs you. It's the judgment you attach to it. Let's actually sit with that, because it gets repeated so often that it's lost its teeth. The dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who started his life as a slave in the Roman Empire, opens his most famous teaching with a division of the entire world into two categories: things that are up to you and things that are not up to you. Your opinions, your intentions, your reactions, up to you. Other people's opinions of you, your reputation, your health, whether the meeting goes well, whether the text comes back, not up to you. Not fully, anyway. There's a story about Epictetus that gets told, maybe embellished over the centuries, but the point survives regardless. His leg was broken by his master, and as the story goes, Epictetus watched it happen the way you'd watch a stranger's leg break, and said something like, "You're going to break it." Not resignation, not numbness. A very precise separation between the event, which he didn't control, and his internal reaction to it, which he did. That's the whole architecture. The event is neutral. The disturbance comes from the judgment stacked on top of it. This shouldn't be happening. This means something terrible about me. I can't handle this. Strip the judgment and you're left with the event, which is almost always more survivable than the story your mind built around it. This is where the phrase cognitive reframing comes from in modern psychology, by the way. It's essentially a secular descendant of what the Stoics were doing with judgment 2,000 years earlier. Marcus Aurelius, who ran the entire Roman Empire while writing private notes to himself that we now call meditations, kept circling back to the same basic move, that the mind is the one territory you actually govern, while everything outside it is on loan. He wasn't writing that down for an audience. He was writing it in the middle of wars, plagues, and family deaths, trying to talk himself down the same way you might at 1 a.m. If this is the first time you're hearing it laid out like this and something in it clicked, that's worth sticking around for, because we're about to get into the part almost nobody tells you. The part where this advice stops being simple. Where just don't judge it falls apart. Here's the honest problem. Most self-help versions of Stoicism stop at the dichotomy of control, drop it over a sunset video, and call it done. It's a great first half of an idea and a genuinely bad complete answer for what to do at 1 a.m. Because knowing something intellectually and being able to use it while your chest is tight are two very different skills. Telling someone with an intrusive thought, "Don't judge it. It's just a thought," is technically true and about as useful as telling someone mid-panic attack to just calm down. The thought doesn't feel neutral. It feels urgent, like it means something about you. So you do the natural thing and try to push it out, argue with it, prove it wrong. And that's exactly where it usually gets worse, not better. Watch how it plays out with the text message. The three dots disappear, and instead of noticing, they stop typing. You build a case, reviewing your last 5 messages for evidence, picturing the conversation where they explain they're pulling away. None of that is happening. You're constructing it in real time, then reacting to what you built as if it were already true. Judgment, doing exactly what the Stoics described in slow motion. There's a well-known finding in psychology, sometimes called ironic process theory. Tell you not to think about a white bear, and the white bear is the only thing you can think about. Suppression doesn't remove a thought, it rehearses it. Every time you fight a thought head-on, you hand it attention, and attention is what makes a thought louder. The intrusive thought at 1 a.m. isn't strong because it's true. It's strong because you've been wrestling it for 3 hours, and wrestling matches by design, keep both people locked in. So the Stoic idea isn't wrong. It's incomplete without a method. That's the actual gap, and it's the part most Stoicism content skips, because don't judge the thought sounds complete as a sentence and falls apart the second you're the one lying awake. The actual practice. So here's something you can genuinely use, built from a technique the Stoics actually used, not a modern gloss on it. Step 1 is naming the thought as an event happening to you, not a fact about you. The Stoics called this examining an impression before giving it your assent, before agreeing that it's true or important. In plain language, instead of, "I'm a terrible person," you say, internally or out loud, "I'm having the thought that I'm a terrible person." That sounds like a small edit. It isn't. It puts a few inches of distance between you and the thought, enough space to notice it's a mental event passing through, not a verdict. Step 2 is what's often called the view from above, a technique Marcus Aurelius used constantly in his private journal, the one we now call meditations, writing that he never intended anyone else to read, which is part of why it feels so unguarded. He'd mentally pull the camera back. Picture yourself from above the room, then above the building, then above the city. This one moment inside one evening, inside one life among billions. He wasn't doing this to feel small in a bad way. He was doing it to get accurate scale back. Because a spiraling thought convinces you that this moment is the entire world, and it isn't, it's one frame. It sounds almost too simple to work, and that's usually the first objection people raise. That's it, just zoom out? But the reason it works isn't magic, it's arithmetic. A racing mind is running on distorted scale, treating a single awkward sentence as if it's a referendum on your worth as a person. Zooming out doesn't erase the sentence. It puts it back at its actual size, which is small, next to a life that's much bigger than any one moment inside it. Here's what that actually looks like in the moment, not as a metaphor, but as a 5-second move you can run right now. Say the intrusive thought hits while you're at your desk. You don't need to close your eyes or leave the room. You just picture the ceiling lifting off the building, then the building shrinking into the block into the city into the curve of the coastline, until you're looking at the whole planet with this one thought happening somewhere on it, in one skull, in one room. Hold that image for 3 breaths. That's the entire technique. You're not analyzing the thought or arguing with it. You're just changing the camera distance, and the thought's grip loosens because its apparent size was the whole problem. Step 3, and this is the part people skip because it feels almost too plain. Let the thought be there without arguing with it. Don't suppress it, don't debate it, don't try to prove it wrong point by point. Just notice it, name it as a passing event, zoom out, and go back to whatever's actually in front of you. The road, the meeting, the conversation. The thought usually doesn't need to be defeated. It needs to be uninteresting enough to lose your attention naturally, which is a very different thing from forcing it out. That's the actual mechanism underneath most of what gets called mindfulness now, and it's straight out of Stoic practice, not fighting the wave, changing your relationship to standing in it. You can run this same 3-step move on almost any version of the spiral. The 1 a.m. replay of the awkward comment. Name it. I'm having the thought that everyone noticed and judged me. Pull back and remember this is one moment in one evening that nobody else is thinking about nearly as hard as you are, and let it sit there unopposed until it loses steam on its own. It won't feel dramatic. It's not supposed to. Stoic practice was never about a single breakthrough moment. It was daily, repetitive, almost boring maintenance, done on purpose, long before the crisis hits. So the move is already familiar when you need it at 1 a.m. If any of this is landing, this is a good moment to subscribe, because we're going to keep walking through the parts of Stoicism people quote, but almost nobody actually explains. The mechanics underneath the quotes, not just the quotes themselves. Where the line actually is. I want to be straight with you about something, because this channel isn't interested in selling you a fix that doesn't exist. If intrusive thoughts show up occasionally, a dark flash while driving, a spiral after an awkward moment, that's ordinary mental noise, and the practice above genuinely helps with that. But if they're frequent, distressing, stuck on a loop no technique interrupts, or you've started rearranging your life to avoid triggering them, please don't try to journal your way out of that. That's a different problem than the one this video is solving. It can be a sign of something like OCD or an anxiety disorder, and it deserves an actual mental health professional, not a philosophy technique. Stoicism is a tool for everyday emotional regulation. It was never built to be, and isn't, a substitute for clinical care. Where this leaves you. So here's the honest version of the shift, not the poster version. Stoicism doesn't stop the wave. Marcus Aurelius, running an empire, burying his own children, dealing with betrayal from people he trusted, still felt the full weight of being human. His journal is full of him reminding himself of these techniques precisely because he needed reminding, over and over, not because he'd graduated past needing them. The dichotomy of control doesn't give you a life without disturbance. It gives you a shorter distance between the wave hitting and you remembering that the wave is not a verdict on who you are. The thought will still show up at 1 a.m. sometimes. What changes is what you do in the 4 seconds after it arrives. Whether you wrestle it for 3 hours or you name it, pull back and let it pass through a mind that's bigger than any single thought inside it. That's really the whole claim Stoicism is making about handling emotions and intrusive thoughts. Not that you'll stop having them, because you won't. You're a person with a nervous system, not a statue. The claim is smaller and more honest than that. The space between the thought and your reaction to it is trainable. Epictetus didn't get to choose whether his leg was broken. Marcus Aurelius didn't get to choose the plague or the betrayals. You don't get to choose whether a dark thought shows up uninvited while you're driving, or whether the reply takes 4 hours to come back. None of that was ever the part on offer. The part on offer is what happens in your mind in the 4 seconds after. And that part, with enough practice, actually does start to move. If this actually helped you think about your own mind a little differently, hit like, subscribe if you want more of this. And in the comments, tell me the actual thought that's been running on a loop for you lately, the one you'd have named if you'd had this technique last night. You don't have to explain the whole backstory, just the sentence. I read every one, and I promise you won't be the only person down there who recognizes it.